Good evening, ladies. It is Owning Your Fire, April the 11th, 2019. Welcome. We got a few minutes before we start. So I'm back to the Great White North. I am not impressed with all this snow. Next year I may have to stay a little later to escape the snow. We came home Friday. And the septic system was frozen, which means Wayne had to do things with boiling water. I stayed out of it. I just stayed out of the way. Wayne did things with boiling water and got it all sorted out. Apparently the problem was he had stacked wood on top of where the pipe runs under the ground, and that stopped it from being insulated by snow and things. Anyway, apparently stocking wood on top of where a pipe runs underground is a bad thing, and we're never doing that again, because that's the only year we've had that, and we've had, this is our third year with this now. We've never had a problem. So he got that sorted out, and we're all okay. It's just entertaining. I'm really liking going south. I really like being with palm trees instead of snow, being in the ocean most days, almost every day. I think we had 3 days of rain, might have been 4. I was there for 90 days, and I think we had 3, 4. I think we had 4 days of rain. Other than that, it was sunshine every day, down in the ocean every day. Riding, we brought our bicycles, so we would ride around the park where we were staying every day. So it was pretty cool. I said we would go in the ocean, and the waves are pretty high there because it's the Atlantic side. So we would go for a bob. It's not really a swim; it's more of a bob. Oh, and the last 2 months when I was in Florida for the workshop, we didn't have video. And when I got home, I talked to Elaine about it. She said it's because the internet wasn't strong enough. Because if there's not enough bandwidth to support the video, it just cuts it back and gives the precedence to audio. And since audio is what we mostly need, that's not a terrible thing. It's just nice to know that's why it's going on. No, Andre is here. We don't usually get Andre live because of the time difference. Four more minutes. Andre says she agrees about the snow. Since she's in Mexico, she doesn't have to deal with snow. Okay, so our theme this year is ease. It's ease. And so what I've noticed is everything we've been doing has been about removing really deep trauma. And we've been doing that from the beginning of the year. So today when I was meditating, it was clear we're going to start with that. I don't know where it's going to go. All I saw was we're going to start with bone breathing. So let's get that going. So pay attention to your breath. Let your breath be slow and low. And then, just like you do cell breathing, what you do with bone breathing is, picture a cell that's in your bones. Breathe in, breathe the light into the light at the center of the cell. That's that life force in the cell. And as you breathe in, that light expands. And as you breathe out, flush that light through your bones. And we're focusing very specifically on bones. And bones are where you hold immutable beliefs. So immutable beliefs are things that you think can't change, like, we're all going to die and gravity works and taxes and things that you think cannot change. The thing is, you don't know a lot of the things that you think are immutable because, they're things that you absorbed as beliefs before you were 5 years old. So you don't necessarily know that you believe what you believe. And that's where you would hold them. The expression of immutable beliefs in your life is through joints and connective tissue. So people who have arthritis, people who have joint pain, all of that kind of stuff, it's because of how an immutable belief is expressing in your life. So for instance, people who think life has to be hard, they're going to have problems with their joints. The challenge is if you're having that, if you're having tennis elbow or sore wrists or whatever, bad knee, any of that kind of stuff, if you're having that kind of stuff, it's to track back, what is the belief that you need to let go? And if it isn't letting go, it's because your aim is off. Always remember that. If you find like you're working on something and it's not going, it means that what you think you're trying to let go is not the thing that needs to let go. It means your aim is off. And kind of go back to the beginning and look at it from scratch. And what I find is really helpful is that turn it on its head, just completely reverse it. If you think, well, okay, it must be the life is hard thing. If I think life is hard, then it's going to be hard. If I'm trying to get rid of that and it's not going, if it feels like it's not going, or if the bad knee is not going, or whatever that is, then I need to think, well, okay, let's look at it. What if I think life is easy? For instance, if you thought life was easy, that might be a contradiction to the tribes that are around you, because if the tribes around you believe life is hard and you're sitting there thinking life is easy, then the primitive part of your brain is going to say, oh my God, you're in danger because you're contradicting the beliefs of the tribe. Estrella says she has left frozen shoulder symptoms, but not a frozen shoulder. Yeah, see? And of course, left is potential. And shoulder is often about being able to reach for things. Like think about, like your body is so literal. It is so literal. It's silly. And so your shoulder is very much about reaching for things. And so what is it that you feel unable to reach for? What is it that you feel is not within your grasp, that you can't get to it? So we're always looking at, what's the body saying? And if it's not going, because like I got to tell you, none of you guys are beginners. If you're trying to clear something and it's not clearing, you need to shake it up. You need to turn it on its head. It's probably completely the opposite of what you think it is. And the problem you have is because you're not beginners, you're really good at figuring this stuff out. And so you're also going to be really good at blocking yourself. It's funny. I decided a long time ago that I like memos, versus challenges in my life. I like memos so much better. So I tend to get messages from novels. And, so I'll notice something in the novel and go, oh, okay, that's a message. But then on the weekend, I was watching something on Netflix because, end of the day, sometimes we watch Netflix. And I noticed we watched 3 shows in a row, and all 3 shows, they were totally different stories, but basically every one of the shows was a situation where big structures were abusing people and justifying their thoughts, justifying their choices. And so you would always have some, person sort of trying to fight City Hall to make things right and basically not succeeding, Um, so you go back from that and you go, okay, so what is this about? Does this mean I shouldn't fight City Hall? Well, you can fight City Hall, but really it's about being strategic. If you kind of stand up and wave a flag that's contradictory to what the tribe is saying, you're just going to draw fire, and you will sabotage yourself because it contradicts your subconscious programming. So you have to think, how can I be strategic? What works and where's the line? You always have to find the line, because there are times when you're going to use that desire to be strategic to kind of keep your mouth shut and not confront. So the challenge is you have to be comfortable with confrontation, comfortable with the conflict, and then be able to be strategic so that you don't need to have that kind of conflict. You can, do the clever thing. Margot says, right wrist, right knee, and unable to reach for resources, or stopping yourself from releasing the new ability to reach for resources. Yes. So wrist is more of a grasping, because if you close your hand to grasp something, all of these tendons are used, right? Yes, you're using muscles in your hand and stuff, but you're also using all this stuff down here. So wrist, it means you're comfortable reaching for it, but you're not able to hold it. You're not able to grasp and hold. Okay. And then the right knee, so if you think your foot could be stepping forward or your hip could be moving forward, your knee is a flex. So if you think, like, you can step forward, but in order to move forward onto that foot, you have to be able to bend your knee. Like, you could step forward without bending your knee. That would be the Russian goose step or the German one. Uh, but you actually, like, to move yourself forward onto that knee without disrupting your hips, you have to be able to flex your knee. So this is more about stepping into. In the same way it's about grasping, okay? In the same way it's about grasping, it's about stepping into. So it's like you're comfortable reaching, and think about this for a minute. You're comfortable wanting something, but not comfortable getting. So that's seek and don't get. That's seek and don't get. She said her thumb is the worst and unable to grasp with the opposable thumb. Let me think. Yeah, that's perfect. You got it. So we do seek and don't get. And we talked about this last time. We talked about this last month. We do seek and don't get because we tell ourselves that we're actually moving into something, and then we don't do it. And we don't do it because we want to stay comfortable with the tribe. Now, here's the thing. It's appropriate for you to keep yourself in the resources of a tribe. It's appropriate. It's appropriate for you to protect yourself by belonging. Okay, whether you're the source of the belonging or you're belonging with others, the fact is you want to have resources. It's a wise thing to do. So if your subconscious is going, like basically don't alienate people, don't cut yourself off, that's valid. So unless you're hurt by a relationship, why wouldn't you keep it? Right? And so the challenge is, again, it's that strategy thing. It's to be able to say, okay, these are resources. How can I interact with these resources to sustain the resources without cost to me? And that's about being really, really honest about what the price is. Is the price worth it? For what you get in this, is this price worth it? Right? Every interaction has a price. That's a fact. At the very least, it's the price of the time you spend on the interaction, right? Judy says she's having problems with her right lower leg. The doc says it's a little old lady problem. Fluid buildup. Yeah, right. I'm not falling for the little old lady problem. So you retain fluid when you're not letting things go. So remember the on the bottom of your foot. So right, if you think, okay, so we'll pretend this is the foot and this is the toes and this is the heel. Okay, so if this is the toes, then right below this is the ball of the foot. Right here is a power in chakra. Okay, and then just above your heel in the center is a garbage out. So this is an outflow and this is an inflow on your feet. Okay, on both feet. And one of the things I had to do when I was in Florida was jack those open more and train myself to use bigger flows for both the release and taking power in. Uh, so let's just pay attention for a minute. So I'll keep the bone breathing going. If you're comfortable doing both, you can do that. But you can let it go and we'll go back to it. So let's just pay attention. Take a shower of light. Just do regular, pure shower of light down through you and flow it out through the garbage out. Just flow it out. Wash. Just take a shower and let that be your drain. And let it wash through your energy. Let it wash through your cells. Let it wash through all of your tissue and the spaces between. That's it. Now think about how you could gently increase the size of that drain. So one way to do it would be kind of like if you trace the edges of it with your finger to just loosen it, to just soften, just soften, just soften like that. So if you could imagine that you could trace the edges of it to just kind of gently, gently enlarge it. It's interesting because the doctor said retaining fluid is an old lady problem. Well, if you think people don't know how to let go, and of course, the longer they live, the more the not letting go becomes, a problem in the body because it builds up. So yeah, okay, it is an old lady problem, but we don't have to do that because we know and we can let go very deliberately. One of the tricks you can use, because like I said, I like memos, is anytime for instance, if you're watching a show or reading a novel or, even hearing gossip or whatever, if you notice things that are bugging you, that's something that needs to let go. There's your memo right there. And sometimes the challenge is like, okay, this thing bugs me. Then what is the thing I need to let go? Right? What is the thing? So if you say, oh, yeah, no, you hear something about politics and it agitates you. Well, part of that is to recognize one, what's your territory? Because your territory defines where you can have influence. And sometimes the form of influence you can have, anybody can write an email. So you can have forms of influence outside your territory, but is anybody going to care if you write an email? Who knows? You can certainly express yourself. The thing is, understanding the boundaries of your territory teaches you about not spending resources in ways that don't have influence. So it's about choosing, how do I want to express myself? Where do I want to say things? What do I want to say? What effect do you want to have? What effect do you want to have? Because your territory balances resources and responsibility. And my definition of responsibility is defining your effect, choosing your effect. So flush all that out. And since we're paying attention to our bones, pay attention to all that light gushing through you, really going through your bones. Like there's a kind of a skin on your bones. And so think about washing the skin on your bones and think about washing the fabric of your bones, if you will. And then in the middle of your bones is where your blood is made. So think about washing all that production stuff. Think about washing your joints and like letting whatever needs to go, let it all wash out the bottom of your feet. Once it leaves your body, it's completely neutral energy because it's out of you. So it doesn't hold anything that you were holding. So I know sometimes people worry about, oh, if I've got something sad or dark or whatever inside me and I wash it out, then I've put it out, like I've put out this negative energy. It doesn't work that way. Energy is completely neutral. You're the one who defines the frequency. So once it's outside of you, it's just neutral energy. It's not like you have bad breath energy. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So if you're comfortable leaving the flow going, so things are going out, you can do that. If it's too much, you can let that go. And now what we're going to do is pay attention to drawing in through that front chakra that's, just underneath the ball of your foot. Sorry, I have to find the camera here. So it's kind of like right there. If this is the ball of your foot, then it's right, oops, underneath it right here. Okay, so let's start with earth energy because that's easy and it's neutral. So think about allowing your awareness to go down into the heart of the earth and go really down where the heartbeat of the earth is, because so much of the earth is carrying stuff, agitation and things like that. So just go, if you go right down into the heart of the earth, it'll be clean, if you will. So go down to the heart of the earth and think about, as like when you breathe in, you can kind of suck that energy up through your feet and all the way through your body, all the way through your body and then out your crown and send it up to the universe. Okay, so the other thing that sometimes concerns people is if you're taking from this earth energy and you're not putting something back in the earth energy, it's like you could drain it dry. It doesn't work that way. It's like your breath, it's just there. You can't take. This is all flow. Every energy is all flow. It's all flow and it's natural flow. Margot goes, oh, both feet, if you can. Both feet, if you can, would be best. Margot asked, 1 foot or both feet, preferably both. And all the way up through you and out through your crown. And you can either send it to the universe or just let it go. You can kind of be a fountain. That's fine. Once it leaves you, it's neutral energy. So if you're tired or upset about something, that kind of thing, doing this kind of thing where you pull an energy that is effectively neutral into you can help charge your batteries. It can help kind of reset you to a more level state, if you will. Marie says, why is the earth energy red? It's a frequency. It's just a frequency. And it does it mean something? Well, yeah. Um, from the chakras that it's like Roy G. Biv, right? It's the rainbow. And so the lower frequencies are lower because they're The lower frequencies are lower in your body because those chakras are more about being in life and being in physical form. Whereas if you go higher, up into the indigos and the violets, it's more about, and the purple, for the new one, um, it's more about connection to spirit. And so that's not it's like one's not better than the other. They're just different. You can have a red shirt and a purple shirt. One is not better than the other. They're just different. You may have a preference, and that preference means something. That's it. Now, just for fun, relax the draw from the center of the earth, and let's take in a different form of energy through your feet. And this is not something that you do sort of naturally. Like when you breathe, you breathe. You just breathe. If you're focused on your breath, you can do things with it. If you're focused on drawing in energy, you can do things with it. But just for fun, let's draw through your feet spirit energy. So just like we did, the white light showering down through us, let's draw white light up through your feet. And just for fun, to notice it feels different, see what happens in your body. It's funny for me, like coming up through that with the white energy, it's more fizzy. And I think that's just because it's used to the red energy. It's not used to this, because you think white has all the colors. That's the way it works, right? Black's an absence of color. White is all of the colors. So when you draw in the white light, you're bringing in all of the frequencies. And it's just the wires are not used to that flow in that direction, if you will. So I think that if you stopped paying attention, you would revert back to the red flow just because that's what you're used to. If you wanted to train yourself to, kind of have that white flow in from your feet all the time, it's just a matter of paying attention. If you did it deliberately for about 6 weeks, it would just become a habit. Is there a pro or con to that? I do a fair bit of helix, so I mean, I think I get used to all those different flows from the different chakras anyway. I just necessarily haven't focused on bringing them in through that specific portal in my feet before. Marie says that the earth energy had felt a little heavy and grounding, and this is more light. Yeah, that sounds exactly right. Not good or bad, just different. Ah, Margot said she immediately got a skeleton framework that she'd not seen before. Cool. I think, there's so many things you can do with AIM. Like I remember at one point, and this was years ago, I was in a physio office. They were doing acupuncture. And at that time, the insurance I had provided free physio. So I figured, poof, I may as well get acupuncture. Why not if I'm getting it for free? So he had a poster on the wall and it showed all the meridians. And it kind of was like the left side of the body was red and the right side was blue or vice versa. It was one or the other. And so there's in the same way that there is with your blood. There were sort of main flows, major meridians, and then, like if you went out, it became exactly like you would picture veins. They became smaller, like roots on a tree. And so I spent some time playing with, bringing my awareness through those flows so I could see, okay, can I go up and down these main flows? Can I pay attention to flowing things out in the branches, if you will? And I was sitting there having acupuncture. I may as well do something. Um, I think it's a good exercise to bring your awareness into different parts of your body because it gives you different information. And it's just, I guess I'm inclined to play with this stuff. What can I say? Um, so I think what we'll do is let go of the flow of light from your feet and bring the earth energy. Remember, go right down to the heart of the earth where the heartbeat is, and just bring up the earth energy just to put yourself in, normal, what your normal is, so that if you want to play with teaching your body to bring in the full spectrum through your feet, you can do that. Just let it be a natural progression. Because if you kind of, if you set it up, okay, we're going to do the white energy and then you forget about it, you might find that you're tired. You might find that you've pushed yourself into a detox that you weren't planning to have time to have. So it's just do it deliberately, do it with intent. Okay, so that's it. Put the red flow back. And then just let go of your awareness of that because it's going to happen anyway. And then let go of your awareness of the outflow. And let's go back to bone breathing. And now just notice, does your bone breathing feel different? Okay, so now we're doing bone breathing and we're going to step through all the places that people mentioned just for fun. So pay attention to bone breathing, pay attention to, going into the center of the bone where stuff is, where blood is produced and red and white blood cells are produced. Pay attention to the joints of the bones, pay attention to the skin on the bone. And let's just do that for a little bit. Okay, so now let's focus your attention on your left shoulder. So now, if you ever have aches and pains or stiff shoulders or tight, lots of people get tight shoulders. Uh, you can put your awareness there, and you can think about, would you like your joints to be more fluid, or do you just want to kind of go into a bone? And it's up to you. Like just let your awareness go where it goes, and just sit with that bone breathing in that spot, and just notice if anything comes. Mm. Okay, and so now we have to pay attention to breathing in 3 dimensions. So just because it's easier to figure out, let's do it with your lungs first. So if you breathe in, there's a sort of a natural lift and expansion to your chest. So if you think of the lift of your chest, literally your boobs go up, that would be the up and down direction. And the expansion of your chest is both the forward back direction and also the side to side direction. So now just pay attention to really, when you breathe in, think about expanding sideways so that your ribs expand sideways, your lungs expand sideways, and just pay attention to that for a couple of breaths. It's odd if you haven't done it, you know. I know the yoga people who do yoga have done it. Okay, and then pay attention to making your chest expand deep so that, you know, this expansion, the forward back expansion. Expansion and release, expansion and release. Breathe in and your chest expands, and then you release and it kind of sinks. Okay, and then, okay, more time. Got it. Okay, and now pay attention to the up and down. So there's like, you breathe in and kind of like your chest lifts up, your shoulders lift up a bit, and it's just paying attention to breathing in that direction. And if you can, see if you can, you know, do the breath so that you're getting all three. So that when you breathe in, you expand sideways, you lift your chest, and you expand your chest outward. And then release it all as you breathe out. Breathing in, expanding in all three directions. Breathing out, releasing. So apparently there's resistance because things are dropping in audio and or video. So people are uncomfortable with this. Uh-huh. And apparently the recording is fine, so that's good. Aha. You know what I didn't do out loud? I didn't set up the ball. I put it in place. I put it in place in everybody because I was paying attention to going around and getting everybody, you know, that's not necessarily physically here for the broadcast. And then I didn't say it out loud. All right. So let's do that. Let's put a ball of light around you and spin it and put in comfort and courage and love and detox and acceptance and approval. All of those things. It's funny because I put it in place and you're used to having it in place. So everybody accepted that energy. But I think you needed the conscious awareness of it to allow yourself to accept the comfort. Interesting thing to recognize, right? Because we do we do this by habit, right? It's like, oh, put the ball, you know, do the thing, pay attention to your breath, and you forget that there's a real purpose for this and it's doing something for you. And it's, if you make it a habit, then you lose the intent, right? That's it. That's better. Lots of comfort, acceptance, approval, and love, and lots of courage. Because anytime you're doing changes, you need the comfort and you need the courage. Okay. So now focus on breathing in three dimensions. As you breathe in, think about letting your chest lift and expand forward and expand your ribs sideways, all three of them together. If you find that difficult, do them one after the other. You know, do one breath lifting your chest up and release, and another breath, you know, expanding your chest outward and release, and another chest breath where you're paying attention to your ribs and release. And the order should be whatever feels right to you. There is something about the order. I'm not going to go there tonight. So trust yourself. Let yourself flow with it. Let yourself go where you feel like going. There you go. That's it. Now, relax how you're breathing and pay attention to bone breathing. And now just think about general bone breathing and think about doing it in 3 dimensions. So you breathe into the bones, and as you breathe out, the light expands in all three dimensions, and also through time and across time. That's the 4th dimension, would be time. That's it. And we're just going to stay with that breathing for a little bit. And this is an awareness, whereas we're doing it with the lungs and the chest. You feel it more of a physical movement. Well, if you want to move with it, that's okay. It's a little harder for me because I'd like to stay on the screen with you. That's it. So that's, again, it's an example of, break it up in pieces. If something is challenging, back off and do it in little steps. So we said, okay, we want to make sure we're getting all the directions. And if we think of cell breathing, we think you breathe into the center and you breathe out. It's like the big ball expanding, expanding. So that's all the directions, right? Except if you're not thinking of that deliberately, you might find, oh, you're going out in this direction, but not necessarily front to back because you just didn't think of it. And you'll do that because you don't want to do the front to back one because there's something blocking you, but you don't know it. So you don't realize you're only doing it kind of, your circle is only going like this. It's not going front to back. It's not 360 degrees. And so we catch these things. Well, okay, I see things going on, or I get told. The thing is, if you're doing it by yourself, you don't necessarily catch it because you're the one who's preserving your own blocks, right? Like this is not being done to you. And you have a reason to put the blocks in place. So you're preserving it for your own reasons. So it's okay to sit there and say, well, no, I want all of my blocks gone. Yeah, but you don't. You don't. And that's what you have to remember. And that's what allows, like, technique can help. Because if you say, okay, one of the things I have to pay attention to is, am I doing the whole circle? When that breath expands, is it going out in all the directions? Right? Oops. Judy says the video shut off on the broadcast. Well, that could be my internet. I don't know. But she can see me and hear me. Well, that's interesting. Can we say resistant? So that could be happening because the internet is not strong enough. And as long as the audio is okay. So for those who are live, could you just confirm that the audio is okay? Because that's the part that matters. Oh, Glenn says she can see me. Thank you, Glenn. Oh, Marie says when their video cuts out, there's no audio. That's not good. But if other people can see me and hear me, it could be the internet on your end. So try refreshing your page. So do a refresh on your browser window. Okay, so what we're going to do is if your audio cuts out, refresh your browser window. Usually what that means is up where, beside where the URL is, there's probably a little like an arrow, almost a circle arrow, and that reloads it. And you might have to press play again on the YouTube window. The internet can be very flaky. So I'd be inclined to blame my internet because I live in the country. But if there are people who are getting it, there are lots of people saying that they're fine. It could be the internet on your end. And, there's a reason for that. So just notice and be aware. We're talking about this, using your breath in 3 dimensions, flushing in 3 dimensions. You get different things depending on the dimension that you're flushing in. So if you're flushing sideways, you get different things than if you're flushing front to back or up and down. And I am not going to go into the details of what the different ones are. Patricia O'Reilly would be better at that than I am. I could do it. I'm not going to do it. Um, nope, not going to do it. I just checked, and I can riddle them off in my head, so that's a good sign. It's it's just an awareness that this is a way for you to check, to catch things that you didn't know were stuck. You think, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm doing all this cell breathing. Yeah, I am. And then you realize, oh, I'm only kind of blowing it out this way, as opposed to blowing it out this way or this way. That's it. Okay, good. That's good. Things are flowing. All right. So, for reasons we haven't figured out yet, apparently breathing in 3 dimensions when you're working on bone stuff is particularly important. Who knew? All right. So now let's go back to the bone breathing, the general bone breathing, paying attention to going in 3 directions. So you breathe in to the spark of light in the center of the cell in the bones. And as you breathe out, allow it to expand in all the directions, front to back, up and down, side to side. Okay. So now we're going to focus on left shoulder. Let your attention go wherever it goes. If I say shoulder, wherever your mind goes, follow that. If it goes into the shoulder joint, or if it goes into the top of your arm, or, up by your neck, whatever comes to you, let your awareness go and breathe into the bones, into every cell in those bones. And as you breathe out, flush in all directions. And I know there's this inclination like, oh, well, I'll just do both my shoulders, or, on how you expand for that. And the minute you're doing that, you're skittering away from something. You're skittering away. I know it seems like you're doing more. Well, yeah, okay. And so let's go back and focus on the left shoulder. There's a reason. So remember when we were doing the lines and you would hold the line to find out what it had to tell you? So now what you can do is, as you're breathing into that shoulder, just think of yourself kind of touching the energy of the shoulder and see what it has to tell you, what are you holding for me? Marie says she's having trouble keeping it bright white. It keeps going red. So think about what that means. It means that you want the earth energy, which is the red is I am safe. That's what it is. Okay. So you want to bring I am safe into your shoulder. You don't want to bring all the other possibilities, right? And I mean, we know what they are. Okay. I'm turning my head because my chakra poster is right there. And so I can read them. Goes from the bottom up. I am safe. I am me. I discover me. I create. I command. I affect. I know. I connect. I am. So you're okay bringing I am safe energy, and you don't want to touch any of the rest. That's okay, because bottom line, you got to start there. Because if it doesn't feel safe, you're not going to connect. You're not going to discover. So what if that's what you need to deal with right now, is just letting yourself learn how to bring I am safe into your bones. And that's important information. And rather than try and force it into being white, which is all of them, maybe what you might want to do for homework is say, okay, well, okay, all right, I can get comfortable with red. What happens if I try orange? Is it okay with orange? Is it okay with blue? Is it okay? And just see, which are the ones that are protesting. And then you'll have an idea how to aim to release, right? Gives you all kinds of information. And that's what I mean when I say technique helps you analyze. Like, you don't actually need any technique. Like, you could just sit there and blow light through yourself and it'll do stuff. I said at one point, I said, like, if you only did detox, stuff would happen. I like to know the information. What can I say? I guess that's the way my mind works. I like to know what's going on. And I think aim is critical. Like, how you aim and releasing stuff determines what you're willing to release, and it tells you something. So changing your aim is kind of a mark of personal evolution, if you will, right? And yes, Maurice, you're welcome. And Maurice says it feels right. So, I keep saying to you, like, when you have something blocked, it feels like, your hand is on your face like this. The minute you can get a space where you can see it, you go, wait a minute, why is that in front of my face? Why did I do that? And the minute you get the space, you go, that was so obvious. Why didn't I see that? Well, because you were busy looking out, hiding from it. Deliberately and for real reasons. For real reasons, right? Marie says the command chakra color won't go into the bone. What's that telling you? It means that you don't want to define your life. You want to keep your life in response to what other people want from you. You don't want to say, my way, I command. So remember, like, before you start jumping all over yourself, remember, it is important to acknowledge that you want the resources of tribes. You don't want to be in isolation. You don't want to be cut off. And that's appropriate. Like, we're tribal creatures. We want companionship. We want support. So rather than saying, well, that's just wrong, say, you know what? I need to feel like I am protecting my tribe, protecting my place in the tribe. And that's okay. Because if you recognize that, you can say, you know what? Like, I can command my life recognizing that I want to sustain the quality of my relationships, or even build more or make them stronger or better. And then you can command that, which is not a threat. There you go. See? And it just like that, it'll go in. And that's why we do all this, playing with different things and doing it different ways. Because, we do, oh, let's try it this way and let's try it that way. Because you discover different things and you find things that you wouldn't find the other way. It's like we poke at it. There you go. So now focus on that left shoulder and think about, like if you touch that energy, what does it tell you? What are you holding for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting me from? Okay. All right. So release, breathing into that left shoulder, unless you want to keep it, and that's totally fine. And let's do right wrist. Okay. So breathe into the bones, breathe into the spark of light in the cells, and breathe out in all the directions. And if that feels like a lot, do the same thing, which is breathe in one direction, then the other direction, like step through them one after the other, because that'll tell you where you're blocking it. Yeah. So Marie says, so if red is feeling safe and the left shoulder is potential for reach, I guess I need to feel safe reaching my full potential. Yep. Got it in one. See? Technique helps because it'll lead you, right? It helps you unravel the puzzle. And we are really complex puzzles, man. Like it's complex. Every direction you look, there's more. That's it. Breathing into that wrist. One wrist. I know you want to jump and do both or all of that stuff. Right wrist. Just for now, we're doing right wrist. And when you're ready, hold the energy and ask it, what are you holding for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting me from? That's it. Now move into the right thumb. Allison says, when you asked what I was holding my shoulder, it came up self-hate, and my wrist was, I will never amount to anything. So now ask yourself if you want to be holding that. Remember, there's a reason. And fundamentally, the reason is to keep you not disrupting what other people want to manifest. So if they want to manifest having people who feel self-hate around them, think about that. Who around you would have a comfort zone that they expect people around them to feel self-hate? And then you're recreating that to keep them feeling comfortable. And are you willing to release yourself from that role, from providing that? Because they can find somebody else to provide that for them. But we get trained, from infancy, we get trained to provide these energies for other people. So think about, as you're doing the bone breathing, are you willing to release that from your shoulder? Are you willing to release it from your wrist? And then the people around you, what you can do is you can put them in a ball and keep them, give them comfort. You can't make them accept it. The thing is, if you continue to hold it, you continue to sustain that pattern for them too. That's it. And so it's totally okay if you want to stay with the shoulder and just work with the shoulder, that's okay. We're looking at thumb. And again, when you're ready, remember, do all three directions. When you're ready, hold it and ask it, what are you holding for me? What are you protecting me from? What are you restricting for me? Fundamentally, we are always holding on to this stuff to keep ourselves small. Now, if you didn't understand strategic, then you would need to keep yourself small to be safe in the tribe. But if you understand strategy, then basically you can do avatar, which means you understand that they're going to experience whatever they want to experience. Like, frankly, regardless of what you're doing. I've told you the story of, when Nicholas was a teenager. I remember at one point he's like 15 and angry. I think all 15-year-old males are angry because they have raging testosterone. And I walked in the kitchen. I said, "Oh, hi, good morning." And he said, "You're always so mean to me." And Andrew was like, "She said good morning. Like, how is that mean, right?" It's like, ah. So it's a perfect. I mean, it was just one of those perfect moments of he's having whatever experience he wants to have. It's got nothing to do with me. I said good morning, right? And so you don't need to hold a specific energy to sustain their comfort zone because they're going to make it all up anyway. So Estrella is asking, is this about ambition and not staying small? And it's about staying small. Fundamentally, it's about protecting the comfort zones of the people around you. And they've learned to stay small. They've learned to conform to other people's comfort zones because, from their childhood. And so if you think everybody you interact with is sustaining the comfort zones of fear and limit and all of those things, they're sustaining all those comfort zones around them, and you're conditioned to do that too, then it becomes a party of everybody sustaining the small piece and the fear piece. And you have to respect that, because I mean, if you trammel it, you're going to cause yourself a lot of turmoil, which you can do if you want to do it, sure. Sometimes I think you kind of have to blow things up to get them to change, and that's what people are doing when they have big drama in their lives. They'll have a big illness or something. It's to give them permission to change. The thing is, you can do it without that, because you can do it with the awareness of how you're affecting other people. with the awareness of choosing how to interact with them. Because you can be aware of their perceptions and choose how to interact with it, you don't have to have big drama and big turmoil in your life. You can kind of glide through it. Now, it can be really hard when you're being objective and realizing like the people around you are determined to be in pain. That's really hard, especially when they're the people you care about. The thing is, are you willing to love them unconditionally? Because that's their choice. And if you think, well, okay, so if I just, if I evolve, then they're going to evolve. And they probably will, but they may not. And it's, are you willing to respect their choice? Are you willing to be happy? It can be challenging. And I've had any number of people say to me, it's too hard to be happy when everybody around you isn't. Now, I've also noticed, if I stay determined, frankly, and some days it feels like, you're holding your candle in the storm. It feels like that. Like, I'm determined. I'm doing this. I'm doing happy. And if you guys all want to, rock out whatever you're doing, you go right ahead. It does shift. It does shift. It takes kind of dogged persistence. And I think we get worn down, and that's okay. That's okay. And then you just have to decide, what do I want? And that's why we'll block the command chakra. Because it's so much easier to just go with the flow of what's around you. It's so much easier to blame your situation and blame the people around you for the state you're in, when in point of fact, you decide. What we really, really don't like is we don't like to choose happy when the people around us are not. We don't like it. So, Astrology got some dings. Good. All right. Did you get information from the thumb? Did you flush out the thumb? So let's just check back. Check, flush the shoulder, flush that right wrist, flush the thumb. See if you're willing to let go of what it's holding for you. You don't have to. It's just, this is about awareness. And the fundamental thing is you may not be ready yet, and that's okay. It's really important to be okay with that because you're holding it for a reason. You're holding it to conform, and that's okay. You may not be ready yet. Part of it, maybe you may not trust yourself to hold your interaction with others. You say, well, okay, so if I'm not holding this, then my life's going to change and they have to deal with it. Allison said, I was working on getting rid of negative drama. It didn't seem to work, and my daughter is now living at home and expecting. Yep, that's challenging. And see, how do you deal with choosing to be in joy when she's literally moved her drama into your house? That's what you have to think about. You aren't doing anything wrong. Allison said, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're not. You're not doing anything wrong. She's made her own choices, and you have to choose how you're going to interact with it. I mean, if you have if you have a daughter who doesn't want to deal with the world, and she clearly doesn't, then what is the requirement that allows her to demand that you let her move back in and basically take care of her? And I got to tell you, getting pregnant is a classic method for demanding support from your parents. It's kind of like cliche. So if she wants to withdraw from the world and not have to deal with stuff, if she wants to feel like there are people around her taking care of her and dealing with her and managing life, like, because you could say, well, oh no, she's still going to have a job and stuff. Yeah, but you know what? You're the one paying the bills. She doesn't have to deal with it. right? She just has to come through the door, and if she pays board or whatever, she's still not dealing with all the bills and stuff. So she, like, basically by moving in, she has taken a huge amount of responsibility off her own shoulders. She's got a built-in support system. Things become turnkey. Her life is now turnkey. Why wouldn't she do that? If she doesn't want to deal with the world and she's not finding the world a real pleasant place to be, why wouldn't she do that? So you're not doing anything wrong. She doesn't want to deal with the world. She's abdicating. She's abdicating. It's like, and so you have to decide. You have to tell the truth that that's what's happening. She doesn't want to deal with it. Here's one thing to consider. I remember years ago there was a school in Quebec where somebody, it was a college or something, and some gunman went in and shot the place up and killed a bunch of kids. Okay. And I was disturbed by this. And I mean, a bunch of schools had been being shot up. And so I went and asked, like, why? Like, why is this happening? And these kids don't want to deal with life. And that's why they left. And I mean, the gunmen had their own reasons. That's a different thing. But like, a gunman goes in and shoots up a school, say 20 kids get killed. They don't all get killed. These 20 kids had a reason for being the ones that got killed. And they were all ones that just didn't want to deal with life. And I got to tell you, that's an ongoing issue for millennials. The millennials find that they believe that they can't be successful and they don't trust the economy. And it's interesting because if you think back to the Cold War, where when I was in this park, most of the volunteers are 70. And so they have all this ongoing lingering terror about nuclear and being bombed by Russia and stuff like that, because that's what they grew up with. I mean, these are kids that were taught to hide under the desk if a nuclear bomb went off, because that's going to help, not. So that's their fear and their training, but they were afraid of the world. They didn't trust the world because it could blow up at any time. They didn't trust the future. They didn't trust the economy. So here's the next generation. So, we're the children of that. The next generation then is these kids who don't trust the world, don't trust the economy, don't trust the future. Gee, where did they get that imprinted from? I wonder, And the generation before that would have been the Depression. So, like, this is an ongoing thing. This is not new programming. This is just, I mean, it looks like a different story because the millennial story is different, but it's not really, because it's the same emotional dynamic. It's the same emotional dynamic. So they're afraid, they don't want to face the world. They don't trust that they can succeed. They don't trust the future. So why would they want to be out there? Estrella says she has a 70-year-old mother who's still doing that. Yep. Okay, so let's pay attention to this bone breathing and let's breathe that out of our bones. Because we've been taught, don't trust the future, don't trust the world, don't trust the economy, don't trust that you'll be okay. Everybody thinks the sky is going to fall. So let's breathe that out of our bones. And if you have that clench that says, yeah, but what if the sky does fall? Well, okay, then you're going to have to choose how to interact with it. The bottom line is being afraid of it is not going to stop it. In fact, it might encourage it. So you have to think, okay, whatever happens, then I got to figure out how to deal with it. Why carry that? Why hold it? So let's think about breathing that out of our bones. Breathe into the light and flush all of that, and flush it in all three directions. And remember, if that's too much, do one direction at a time. Side to side, front to back, up and down. Pay attention to your teeth and your jaws doing this, because I can feel a lot of stuff there. And your pelvis. Okay, all right, we're doing all the bones and all the joints. Ooh, wow, that's a big one. Wow. If I trail that one back through history, like I said, if we do if you go back to surf time, if you think a lot of people who were in North America are immigrants from countries where they left the position of a serf and came over here to have freedom. Well, they're leaving everything they know, so they don't trust the future. They don't trust that this is going to be okay. And if we went back before that, when you were a serf, you never knew when someone was going to decide to chop your head off or something, so they wouldn't trust the future and they wouldn't know things were going to be okay. So, like, how far does this go? Right? How far back does this go? This is a very old human program. And isn't it cool that we found it? So I just think let that go. And it's imprinted genetically. It's imprinted, yeah. There's lots of akashic stuff there. So so let's just flush that all out. All right. Oh, good work. Okay, so now in the midst of that, we're going to go back and pay attention to those two chakras in the feet. Remember, we were expanding them? So, just kind of tracing the edges and allowing them to open up a bit more. And so remember, the flow is there whether you're paying attention to it or not. You got power in and garbage out. And so just think about letting those flows expand. Because apparently we need to expand them if we're letting go of this program. Who knew? Just, Allison, just for the record, your older daughter has a child and that gives her a lot of status. And so your younger daughter is always going to be in competition looking for that status. So in her mind, how you get the status is have a kid. So that's also an element of this. I think the primary reason is the withdrawal from the world thing, but that like the status thing has always been a thing. Okay. Lots of flushing. That's it. Good on expanding those chakras. Good. All right. So now we were doing right. Next is the right knee. Let's go look at the right knee and pay attention to the bone breathing there. And breathing in 3 directions. And then hold that energy and ask, what are you holding for me? What are you blocking for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting me from? So Judy says her right knee has been making popping noises lately, but she's not getting anything. That's okay. Stay with the breathing, because the reason you wouldn't get anything at the moment when you're looking at it is to hold on to the using it, hold on to having that block. And so you have to kind of go at it from a different direction. And so focus on the what are you protecting me from, as opposed, because if you say, what are you blocking, basically, you're already considering that a negative. So if you ask, what are you protecting me from, then I might be willing to go there. And if it won't go, just stay with the breathing. Check the check the three directions, like split them up and do the breathing in each direction and see if one of them is not cooperating. And if all of them are cooperating, then check colors in the energy, because there's information there. And I'm doing that to say this, when you're doing it yourself, you can find this. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes and then I'll look. I mean, I'll look anyway. Mm. So you've got old lady, popping knees and swelling legs and stuff. This is a resistance to retirement because you don't want to be like your mother. Because I guess your mother has been, quote, retired for a while now. And part of what's been going on is you're seeing things that you didn't know in the past. So you have kind of an association with seeing the truth of her with seeing her as a retired person. And so a lot of this stuff is you don't want to be like that. So you might want to remove the association. So okay, so everybody just think about that. And yes, Maurice, I see that. I'll get it in a sec. Just think about what you associate with being retired or being aged. Like you could, uh, people might think, oh, you get old and bitter, or you get angry, or you stop wanting to do things. You get, uh, like you lose your sense of adventure and everything becomes too much trouble. Like think about what the things are that you believe, whether you believe they'll be true of you or not. The fact is, if you believe they're true of people around you that are elderly or people you've had experiences of, or just social perceptions you have, you still have the belief. So even if you don't think you think that of you, you do because you're holding it. So find those beliefs and flush them out. So Maurice, that's left is potential, right is fulfillment. Left is possibility, right is acting it and living it. Left is idea, right is action. So left is potential, right is fulfillment. Okay, so I have to repeat this one, and you've heard this one a million times. So you have to remember the step thing. So if you're going to take a step, that's a potential. The minute you take that step, you push one foot forward, you've now fulfilled your potential to take a step. The thing is, in the fulfillment of the potential, you have created the potential to take the next step. So when you step forward, you've now created the potential to lift your other foot and go forward. So immediately fulfillment creates potential. And a lot of times when we think we're blocked in something, it's not the first step we're afraid of, it's the potential it creates. So the example I always use is, it's not the promotion you're afraid of. It's if you get this promotion, then the next promotion becomes available. And so you may forbid yourself from getting one promotion because you don't want to deal with the next one. Um, so Marie says, when the symptom is on the right, does that mean you are in resistance to taking the action, or is the symptom to stop you from taking the action? So the symptom typically means you are resistant to taking the action. You're resistant to fulfilling the potential, right? Oh, Judy says that was actually from her. And the thing is, you could be resistant to fulfilling the potential for its own sake. Like if it's about getting a promotion, you might be afraid of the promotion, or you could be totally comfortable with the promotion and be afraid of the potential it creates. You fulfill this one, there's a new potential. So people who want to meet someone, for instance, they think, oh, I'd like to meet someone, that would be the person for me, my one or whatever. The thing is, if you meet them, then a whole bunch of potentials get created. The potential that you could live with them, or the potential that they might want to get married, or the potential that now you might have a long-term relationship that opens up all kinds of potentials. And so the idea of meeting someone can sound great, because you haven't thought about, well, what's that going to be like to live with, and what if they want something from you, and what if you don't want the things that go with it. So the fantasy of meeting someone can seem really totally fine, because you're just not thinking past it. And you're not afraid of meeting someone, you're afraid of all these potentials that will be created if you do. That's it. So check all the directions, check the color, flush. Okay, so now let's focus on flushing that program that is, afraid of the future, afraid of potentials, afraid of fulfillment, just afraid. So afraid of the world, afraid of what comes into being, because the bottom line is, because this all hooks together, right? Like it's that same thing. We talk about something and then it all connects, and it connects. We keep ourselves small because we're protecting our place in the tribe. And even if the tribe makes you miserable, you'll still protect your place in it because it's a survival. Back in the cave, you needed the tribe to survive. So it's not about, for your limbic system, it's not about happy, it's about survival. So even if your tribe makes you absolutely miserable, you will protect staying in the tribe. So you will keep yourself holding the fulfillment of their comfort zones. You will keep yourself holding being small, keeping yourself the way they are comfortable. And you will block choosing happy, or even if you think you're choosing happy, you'll block fulfilling it, because that would disrupt things. And then if you fulfill that potential, then you have to deal with it all. You have to deal with being the happy one when people around you are doing all this drama. One thing people talk about is, look at the role you had in your family growing up. So I know that, sometimes the kid is the troublemaker and sometimes the kid is the one who does things according to the rules, and they contrast each other, right? Um, I know growing up I was a troublemaker for sure, and I was the oldest, so I had to beat the path for everybody who came after me. I didn't know that at the time. I was just trying to live and trying to figure out how to deal with stuff. I didn't see myself as having a role in the family. I wasn't aware of myself that way. Now I can look back and say, "Oh yeah, it was definitely my job to be the troublemaker and cause all this drama." The thing is, I was just being a teenager. I didn't do anything spectacular. Really, I didn't. Um, but I sure got all kinds of dramatic reaction. So my purpose in doing all this was to provide the drama. And I can look back now and see, like, it's very clear to me. So, my dad was the country doctor. He was gone all the time, delivering babies and doing house calls and all the rest of it. And my mother was always trying to demand attention. But, sick people and babies are coming now, like they always took priority. So she was always trying to make things urgent. And so having a teenager in trouble was urgent, even though it wasn't trouble, like really. It was just ordinary teenager stuff. But boy, there was lots of drama around it, right? So I can look back and go, oh yeah, that's pretty obvious, right? So kind of ask yourself, like, at the time, I certainly wasn't thinking that way. So my experience of those events was from the perspective that I had at the time. So a lot of times what you're doing with this is you're going back and looking, you're sort of looking from your adult perspective now and going, "Oh, that's what's going on. That's the thing." Right? And I find like I read novels a fair bit, and I like it when writers are able to give you that perspective of, here's a teenager just being a normal teenager. When um when they are able to put things in that kind of perspective and you go, "Oh, click, yeah, because I was just being a normal teenager, duh," right? And you're able to sit back and revisit and reframe what was going on to say, "Oh yeah, why was that such a big fuss? Because it really wasn't a big deal." you know okay, release, just release, release, release. And now let's focus the bone breathing on the right lower leg, and just wherever your attention takes you, that's where you go. And see, if you find your mind doing this, "Oh, well, my right lower leg is just fine. I think I'll go over here where I actually have a problem." Stop that. You can do the problem area another time. Right now, go, because the minute you're skittering away from it, there's something you're avoiding. So allow your attention to go to your right lower leg. It's got important information, even though you're trying to get away from it. Breathing in all three directions, and then hold it and say, "What are you holding for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting me from?" Okay. Little, what are you protecting for me? Apparently, we want a different question this time. What are you protecting for me? Judy said she's getting waves of sadness. I think it's really hard for us to be aware of, of other people's pain and their choices to be in pain. And I think it gets even harder the more we're aware, the more we are aware that it really is their choice. And so, if you kind of think like if you went and sat in a coffee shop and just watched people go by, um, that if you truly saw the pain that they're in and the choices they're making to be in pain, wouldn't you just kind of be in a puddle sitting there watching them? So how do you not be in a puddle all the time? And the answer to that is, I mean, you have to do the grieving you need to do, because sometimes you're just going to be in a puddle watching them. Like, that's okay. Because the truth is, it is sad, right? And where you have to let the grief happen, and then you have to bring yourself to, how do you respect their choices? And what that goes back to is, people want interesting lives. They want interesting lives. They don't want to have a storybook life that is just, picture perfect and happy. And I remember one time I was at a writers conference with this. It was Nora Roberts, who's a big name writer, and she was talking about how writers will get attached to the characters they're writing about in their stories, and then they want to make their life easy and make everything roses and happily ever after. And she said, if you want to write a good book, she said, you have to put your people in hard situations. And then when you think, this is the darkest it's going to be and life is miserable, then instead of pulling them out of the hole you wrote them into, you have to kick dirt on them, you because nobody wants to read a book about ordinary life. They just don't want to read that book. They want to read books that are about challenges and how people overcome the challenges. And they may want happily ever after, but you need to have something to overcome to get to the happily ever after, because otherwise it's boring, right? Now, that's hard to accept, because it's one thing if you sit down and you watch a movie or something where people go through some hardship and then, it resolves itself. It's another thing when it's real life. You're like, why? Why are they doing that? Well, you think that there was a bus that crashed. A bunch of kids, I think it was a hockey team. Bunch of kids on a hockey team were going to a tournament. The bus crashed and, like, I don't know, 20 people got killed. It was horrendous. They were from some small town, going to some conference, and I thought, this is this is the immediate impact on the lives of the people. People lost their kids. The coaches died. Like, the bus driver died. A lot of people died. Judy says it was in Saskatoon, and there's 15 dead. See, that's really good. Then there's a hole in the male teenager population of that town that's going to affect, who's available to form a partnership with. It will probably drive some of the kids to leave, to go, like, because some of the girls are going to leave because there's just not enough guys. There is a whole dynamic that's now been created through time because of this event. So it's like there's the immediate loss that's occurred, and then there's the ripples forward. And there's going to be siblings that survived that are going to have survivor guilt, and they're going to have impacts on their lives and what they believe they have to do and stuff because this occurred. There's probably, girls who lost boyfriends. There's going to be all kinds of things that don't occur in the moment of the loss and the pain and the funerals and all the rest of it, but are going to ripple forward. So 20 years from now, that town is different. And 20 years from now, those lives are not ordinary. They've had their 15 minutes of fame, as horrendous as it is. The fact is they've had it. The thing is, people don't want uneventful lives. They want lives that matter. And so, if you kind of pluck someone, reach down the hand and pluck someone and stick them on a stool in front of a camera and say, why does your life matter? They want to have a story. They want to have something that's significant. So they want to have something that is making them different and standing out. Now, for a lot of people, if somebody had a parent die when they were young, that's a lot, and it has a huge impact. For somebody who's experienced violence or experienced abuse, like these are things that affect the outcome of their life, but they have a choice. They either choose to be a victim of that or they choose to confront it, which gives them the capacity to choose. So it takes them out of their ordinary patterns. And then, now they're saying, well, wait a minute, now what do I want? Because I don't want to be defined by that. It gives them a different capacity to choose. So it's interesting if you talk to people who don't know anything about energy work or self-awareness. We spent time in the RV park where, we're surrounded by the Q-tips, which is all the people who are, white fluff on top. You get in the hot tub and like what they tell you about who they are is so revealing to me. And they have no idea, of course, how revealing they're being, because they don't know me and they're probably not going to see me again, like not after the 2 weeks I was there. So, basically I'm a complete stranger. So it's, what do they tell me about who they are in that chance encounter moment thing? And it's really interesting to me because they tell me, like, the stories are like, oh, my mother was a prisoner of war in Poland and therefore all sorts of things. Or, like things that happen to them that are, TV movie worthy, that people will tell you what differentiates them. Or if they're hiding, they'll tell you what makes them the same. So that, they're looking for no differentiation, right? And that just is interesting all by itself. So our challenge is to recognize that people don't necessarily want easy, peaceful lives. They want story-worthy lives. They want to matter. They want to be significant. They want their 15 minutes of fame, if you will. Um, and that's their right. And so it's up to us to figure out, how are we going to live with all this drama around us? How are we going to accept their choice? And how do we define our territory? How do we define our territory so we decide what effect we want to have, right? So I know, for instance, they started a GoFundMe for the whole event of the 15 people who died in this bus thing, and they've got over $5 million. Wayne said, I suspect a lot of professional hockey players donated chunks of money. Yeah, but lots of people would say, I want to help. And so a GoFundMe works. People then can help. And that's their choice because that's their expression of self. And they're defining, this tragedy touches me, so I want to give. That means they've put it in their territory. And that's interesting because is it in their territory because they feel powerless in the face of such tragedy, so they have to contribute something? That's okay. That's, if it makes them feel better, good. Is it that they're hurting, so they have to express it somehow? There's so many things that are going on there. And Where you need to be in terms of how to interact with all these choices people make is defining your territory. If something happens, if some tragedy happens, what effect do you want to have? Is this, it's a story, but is it really about you? Right? Is it's always a memo. It's always a memo. And, it's about choosing how you interact with other people's choices. And we have a lot of programming that says we want to change their choices, we want to influence their choices. One, because we want the status of that. We crave the status of having influence on people because having status in the tribe makes you feel safe. But also we want them to do what we think is right. And you have to understand that for some people, right is living in poverty or right is living with abuse. And they're still going to try and impose that on people and they'll have a story to justify it. And so our challenge is to be able to be a distinct being, to be able to recognize what's going on with these people and stay true to you. And I'm constantly looking at, what are these memos telling me and what am I examining and, what am I trying to figure out about this? And it's interesting to see how much we want to have influence with people who have nothing to do with us, really. How much we want them to do what makes us comfortable. We want people to do what makes us comfortable. And we don't like it when they don't. And that's our desire to keep our comfort zone. So if we go back to, here's all this programming we have to keep other people's comfort zones safe, really, we want them to keep us safe. We want them to sustain our comfort zones. That's why we do it. So now we're not going to do this. I'm going to talk about it and we'll do something different. It seems kind of obvious to say, let's flush out that program of wanting people to sustain our comfort zone. I don't think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think that's really unfair to your limbic system. It's really unfair to you. Why shouldn't you have your comfort zone? So, what I think would be wise to do instead would be to become more and more aware of your comfort zone so that you can make a choice about a specific element of it. If you try to do something like, let's just flush out this whole thing about, sustaining my comfort zone, it's kind of like taking a hammer to your head. Like, it's like, I'm sorry, this is not a good idea. It's all about aim. It's all about choice. So what you can do is say, I would like to see the memos that point out my comfort zone to me. And then I can recognize elements of my comfort zone and choose for those specific elements if I want to release them or not. Because then you could take into awareness, well, okay, if I decide I don't want that comfort zone anymore, then what am I doing to keep me safe? What am I replacing it with? How am I being safe in the world if I take this element of how I've kept myself safe all these years, if I take it away? We have a contradiction between the desire to kind of be invisible because we don't want any negative attention and the fear of being invisible. And that's part of that, you want something in your life that makes your story worth telling kind of thing, worth people's attention, if you will. So we don't want negative attention, even if it's our comfort zone and we will recreate it and crave it. We don't want it. We don't want pain. But we're also really afraid of disappearing, right? I see, we're in this RV park and there's lots of elderly people there, and who's going to notice if they're gone? So if they have family, maybe the family will notice. They've if they're living in, because a lot of them, they move to these parks and they stay there. So if they're living in a park like this, they've removed themselves from wherever they were and they've moved here. So now they're away from all the people who used to be their friends and, wherever their family is, they're away from that. So they're living a kind of an isolated existence. So are they waiting to die? Is that what's going on? For some of them, that's the case. Now, for some of them, they build a social life and they have lots of friends. And their families come to visit all the time and different thing. But for some of them, they're just waiting to die. And you can see it. You can see it pretty clearly. So are they engaged with life or are they withdrawing from life? What's going on there? And so we're challenged because we are drawn to having the security of tribe, and yet that comes with prices, right? It comes with demands, it comes with all kinds of things, and we don't necessarily feel comfortable with that. So I think what we want to do is we want to let the bone breathing go through all of your bones and all of your joints and just allow yourself awareness of your comfort zones. Allow yourself to see the memos. Breathing into the light, and as you breathe out, flush. That's it. Okay, so now we're going to pay attention to your tailbone, your coccyx. Coccyx? Coccyx, I think it is. Pay attention to your tailbone and do the breathing in all three directions. And I think it would be good, like if you're going through this and doing it again, I think it would be good to just kind of go through your body, like, start with your toes and work your way up or start with your head and work your way down, whichever, and just do kind of like an inventory, do your left hip, do your right hip, do your sacro, uh, like these hip joints are big joints, do your spine, do the whole spine and do the spine in sections. And, we did sections today based on what people said. The thing is, you're using the same process for all of it. So it's worth doing an inventory, right? And especially any place where you've had injuries in the past, even if they're totally recovered, do the places you've had injuries, do the teeth that you've had work done on your teeth. Um, if you have vision issues, then do the sockets for your eyes, that kind of stuff. Obviously, like do your hands. You might want to do each of your fingers. And what you could do is just sit and do bone breathing and just notice, like, let yourself be drawn to where you need to pay attention. So let's just do that one. Okay, let's finish the tailbone, which is ask it. What are you holding for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting me from? What are you protecting for me? That's it. and then let it flush. Okay, now bring the breathing to your entire skeletal structure and just breathe in all three directions. Just a couple of breaths, just stay with the bone breathing. That's it, stay with the bone breathing. And then just let your attention go somewhere. It could be because of an ache or a pain, or it just could let it wander wherever it goes. And stay with that spot and do the breathing in three directions. Sometimes when you do this, like you'll say, oh, I think I'll go to my elbow, because my elbow bothered me. And then you'll find your attention's gone somewhere else. And then you don't know, like, am I skittering away from my elbow or am I skittering away from the other thing? You know what? You can do them one after the other. So notice you had a thought about the elbow, you had a thought about this other spot. Do one and then do the other, because there's a reason. There's a reason they're both there, and there's a reason you're conflicted about it. Breath in three directions. And then ask it, what are you holding for me? What are you restricting for me? What are you protecting for me? What are you protecting me from? That's it. And now flush. And let's go back to the whole skeleton. And breathe in three directions and flush. Okay. And so release the bone breathing. And then let's go back and pay attention to those two chakras on the bottom of the feet. So let's send a shower down from straight down through and flush out through the release chakra. Release anything that needs to go. And then from going right from the earth, right from the heartbeat of the earth, breathing that red light in and up through and out through the crown, and let that red light do the integration for you, because you've done lots of changes. So let it do the integration so you can make all these transitions with ease. Okay, so let's let that flow for a couple of minutes. Any last questions, comments, observations? I saw lots of flares. Usually when I see flares, it's the ahas going off or the comprehension of what you're observing or connecting with going off. I saw lots of that, and that's always a good sign. Now, sometimes the people I'm seeing that from are not actually present online in the moment. That's okay too. So Judy says there are no comments. I probably flattened everybody because that's what happens. We get tired. And I've been noticing consistently, and maybe you guys can tell me if that's true, that around 8:15, you're pretty cooked. And I was pondering and wondering if that is because I'm only online now, so I've taken the brakes off a lot more because I'm not thinking, oh, somebody has to drive or anything. I'm like, okay, they're all safe at home, right? And and so are you experiencing that too? That by 8:15 you're wiped, and the only way you're going to hear the rest of it is if you go back and listen to the recording, and that's okay. Just you know, Oh, Glenn says, I'm having problems directing energy at my back. Okay, so keep in mind that right now your back is your permission to withdraw from the world. So it's protecting you in that withdrawing from the world. You don't want to have energy in your back. You don't want to change that. So you have to, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to think about how do you want to interact with the world? What do you want this to change to? It's not fear to take away your support system. Back supports to there's literal. Told you, body's so literal. Okay, we're doing good. All right, so let's release, focusing on the energy coming in through your feet, and then release, focusing on the flow down through you. And then let's focus on the ball of light and put everybody, you're welcome, Gillian. Let's put everybody in the ball of light and just let's share that energy. Think about everybody in the group is giving you energy and let yourself accept the energy that everybody's giving you. It's unconditional. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, ladies. Our next workshop is May the 9th. All right. I feel pretty good about this. We've had a good night. All right. So, I always say this, there's lots here that you could go back and do more work with. I think like doing that kind of inventory thing on your body would be a great idea if it works out for you. So, you're welcome. You're very welcome. All right. Good night and take care. We'll see you next month.